We'll do it live. Let's do it live. I'll write the thing myself, Fiorella, and we'll do it live. Welcome back to the TruthWire, everybody. That was my imitation of Bill O'Reilly, his classical clip that went viral. Tape was still rolling, and he says, F it, we'll do it live. But anyways, we are live. We are the TruthWire live. I am your host, Craig Pasta Jardula.
And I'm Fiorella. Is it just me, or do you look blurry? Do you look normal?
Am I blurry, Jayme?
Yeah.
Better now?
You're very...
Better now. Still blurry.
A little bit. You're still blurry.
Jayme?
Yeah.
Very
Maybe.
blurry.
I'm coming out
Yeah.
and coming back in.
Okay.
Bam, get it.
Yeah. So, hey, everybody, what's up? Yesterday, I released an episode with Vanessa Beeley. We really deep dived into a lot of like the internet stuff, like how everything is just so chaotic, and a lot of the news or journalism is pretty much becoming just like sensationalist posting. Like there was something that happened yesterday where they were saying like China ended trade with Israel, which isn't true. It was not even confirmed by China, but like everybody reported on it. Even like Reuters also reported on Alex Saab being taken prisoner in an FBI operation with Delcy Rodriguez, which has been denied by multiple Venezuelan officials. So just because it's like on mainstream media and a lot of these things are coming out, a lot of them are now getting their information from Telegram or from Twitter, and they're not really like checking the information. So we were kind of doing like a deep dive on that, and we talked a lot about Chomsky. So it's on my Substack, and it also played on YouTube earlier. I didn't share it. I will go ahead and share it. Had a busy morning today.
Yeah.
And
all the
so,
mainstream media
yeah.
outlets, fam, are confirming their own bullshit. This reminds me of the Dick Cheney thing with the weapons of mass destruction. Here we are today. Even RT put up a piece about Somali fraud and confirming it through Fox News and through NBC. I mean, where are we at with these fucking people nowadays? Everybody. Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
There's no standard. I mean, I'm not, pompous, but like, I don't want to be pompous, but like, it's just like, there used to be a standard way back in the day, before our time, like where the media was actually the media and they had standards. And now all of that's gone to hell, especially with the internet. And like, I'm not advocating for censorship, but it's up to you then to like actually go and find the source. Ask yourself, like, where is this coming from? Who has confirmed it? Like, especially if it's from a foreign country, when it's foreign policy stuff, like 9 times out of 10, it's not even true. Like, or there's something deeper and more complex going on. So, I had to say that. And by the way, today, Michael Tracy was defending Epstein. Like, he was just doing a lot of it's just gross to watch that. Like, it's consistently, though, I will say Michael Tracy, and I'm saying his name because you can go look on his timeline. Anytime it's anything related to do with a woman, he like takes the side of the other person. Obviously, the Me Too movement was like a gigantic democratic, operation to where like they exploited a lot of things and a lot of men get accused falsely. And I totally agree that we should look at things, like meticulously and individually. But like in terms of Epstein, there's literally how do you take the position of diminishing what he did, which has long been known way before, again, these 3 million, 2 million pieces of information are dropped, selected, right? And I saw a post by Rokana on Facebook where he was saying like they should he's actually good at some of these things, like as much as he annoys me. He was advocating that they remove the names, like the blocks, the redacted blanks on a lot of these papers. But guys, they're not going to do it because a lot of those people are working in Washington themselves. A lot of those people are friends of the people in Washington, or they're acquaintances, or they're, related. We're not going to see power expose itself and give itself up in front of the public. We're just not going to get that kind of justice. And it's not that I think we shouldn't fight for it. I just think like the way we're doing, like we expect it to come from them, it's just not going to happen that way.
And I don't think they'll give us the truth anyways. They'll lead us in the wrong direction.
No.
Those things have been so compromised. It's beyond belief right now. They've been in the hands of those officials for quite some time. I mean, if we got like right when they went into Little St. James Island over there and they went right in and like the next day they released stuff, it would be a different story. But they didn't do that. They've held on to that stuff since now. They've washed what they wanted to. They've covered up for who they need to cover up for. And they're going to just give us a bunch of bullshit pointing us in the wrong direction. Unfortunately, I want people to understand this right now, as much as it means that they do release a lot of stuff. That's why they released a lot of stuff that was true, a lot of stuff we already knew, a lot of people involved. Oh, there's a picture of what's his name, Salman, Mohammed bin Salman, from the Crown Prince, Royal Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Yeah, Epstein had a picture of Mohammed bin Salman on his wall in Little St. James in one of his offices. We knew there was a relationship there, right?
Yeah.
It's like, now you're just showing us a picture of those two. We already knew that, but they do that. The reason why they do that is they want to build confidence, so they give you a lot of true information. Remember, there's a lot of truth in psyops, right? Because to mislead you, they have to once gain your trust. So if they gain your trust with the truth, just be aware of where they're leading you. And by the way, fam, I don't think we should really pick on Mike Tracy anymore. He's still dealing with stuff from high school, you know, girls that wouldn't go out with him, and he couldn't sit at the pool table, and you know.
Well, that's what happened with the Idaho killer, right? The guy that killed those college kids. Like, yeah. I'm just saying, like, that stuff needs to be dealt with, or whatever issue you have with women. I'm literally not one to say, like, talk about this stuff, like, unless it's legit, but like, you can consistently go to his timeline, and anytime there's anything to do with a woman, he just has to bash, like, he has to take the side of whatever person. And this time it's Epstein, and it's like, well, he literally is a convicted sex trafficker, pedophile. Like, he did what he did. Like, there's no need to defend him. Like, a lot of these people coming out defending Chomsky or defending whatever, it's like, it would be better if you shut your mouth for yourself and your credibility, even if you thought, hey, maybe I still like Chomsky. And again, nobody's telling you not to read his freaking book. We're just saying, like, he's not who you thought he was anyway. And a lot of anti-imperialist, non-American, non-US American people knew that already. This is just like more icing on the cake for who he was.
And it also exposes who he was when it comes to Libya, when it comes to Cuba, when it comes to the COVID. We know exactly who he's pandering for at this point. Does that diminish some of his old work? Yeah, for some people it does. But you know what I'm saying? I think it's better to keep your mouth shut. I wanted to call somebody over at the Gray Zone and say, please take away fucking Aaron Mate's phone and his ability to go to his Twitter. Please stop him before he makes more of an ass out of himself. Don't double down. Just you shouldn't have said anything anyways. Just shut up and go on. Same thing with Tracy. Once again, you're going to defend Joe Biden against Tara Reid. You know, I don't care if Tara Reid is a liar or whatever you're accusing her of. Look who you're defending. You're defending a guy who his own daughter said that he used to shower. Her dad showered with her when she was 14 years old. I mean, that's creepy ass fucking shit. We saw plenty of the videos of Joe Biden sniffing little girls and trying to hug them and stuff. Pick your battles, bro.
Creepy on his own.
Pick your fucking battles. Like that, there's no need to defend Joe Biden and say he's not a sex pest, even if he wasn't being a sex pest in this one occasion. It's still a dumb fucking fight to get in with you. And you're right, fam. It's not even to say the right thing. Just shut the fuck up and don't say anything at all.
You know that old saying, sometimes if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Some people should take that. So there's a lot going on as usual. But we did an interview with our good friend Danny Shaw, like a deep interview on Venezuela, Cuba. And, I kind of was discussing it back and forth with him too, because I had just gotten done with another interview where I was discussing similar things. So it's you guys will play it after the show. We're going to do a short show and play that one. And it's all about Venezuela, because I see people in the chat asking about Venezuela, asking about, what's going on. What I will say right now is Cuba is in a very precarious situation. Cuba is in an awful, awful situation. They are literally in the worst situation they have been in a very long time, if ever. So what people should do is be talking about that, raising awareness, trying to push them to get aid, food, whatever they can, because they're not in a position right now for people to survive. Their caloric intake is going to be very slim. People are actually going to be starving. And I guess it's normal for us now as a society because we did let a genocide continue ongoing for more than 2 years. So, I mean, again, like what's next now? The United States has Cuba in its radar, and they're not stopping the targeting of Cuba. So, I did want to say that as we get
And
into
Russia's
this.
not coming to the defense, fam. Russia's not going to pull up in there with a bunch of tankers and oils, flying a bunch of supplies. No, not at all.
No, it's not in their sphere of influence, so that's not going to happen. And like the thing is, I say it that coldly because that's just the world we live in right now, is how it functions. And as I stated, I think more information is coming out, but Russia is facing like economic challenges as well. There's a lot of talk about the global market of the ruble, but they're facing a lot of economic challenges, and like that's the reality. And I can say that as somebody who's lived there for over 3 years. And when I first got there, things were a lot cheaper, and they've increasingly gone up in price. And like that's everywhere, right? Like you can go anywhere and you can experience that right now in the world. It's not just Russia, but what I am seeing though is there is like a global right now, like a global depression happening, and most countries are not excluded from that. I would say except China, right? And I think this is why a lot of people like think China should be the savior. But again, this just means that China is rising and other economies are falling. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to equal like China saving the world. I don't think it should be on any one country to do that anyway. But this world is functioning very financially, right? And there's a lot of transactions going on, and that takes us to our first subject, which we're going to talk about Russia, Ukraine, U.S. peace talks. This has been ongoing now. We're a year in since the beginning when they were meeting in Istanbul. And they were meeting and talking about economic cooperation in the Arctic. They were talking about ending the war then. And a lot of people have said that they don't believe this is going to come to an end, but I actually do believe that it is, but it's not a favorable thing for Russia to make a deal, for anybody to make a deal with the United States. We all know this. There's divisions in how to approach this. The military is a lot more anti-negotiating with the US. Elements within Russia are very keen on what happens when you negotiate with the US. Putin obviously knows the story. Like, they're not dumb, they know. But same as Venezuela, there are certain things that are happening that they would like to stop. Like, and one of those things is actually the inflation. And this isn't really talked about because it's not preferred by a lot of commentators to talk about it. And I don't focus on it because mostly I focus on foreign policy. So let's just start off by talking about the Russia-Ukraine war second round of peace talks that begun in Abu Dhabi. And I kind of want to go over the AP article. If you can put that one up. We'll go through the AP article. So one of the things that they agreed to do is to reestablish military dialogue after these talks. So they have agreed to establish high-level military dialogue for the first time in more than 4 years. And I believe this is actually really significant because if that's going to happen, then Russia's basically dealing with the direct creator of the war, right? We know the United States is the one that pushed for this war, Victoria Nuland, Jeffrey Pyatt, et cetera, et cetera. Like, we know that this is how it all began. Their relationship with Ukraine is almost irrelevant because Ukraine is irrelevant in this. They're a proxy. So if they're reestablishing a relationship with the United States, that's actually what's more important than anything with Ukraine, because Ukraine is ultimately dependent on the United States and NATO is not in an economic position to fund this war. No matter how many times they cry and say that Putin is this and that, they're not in a position to actually fund this war. Russia is also wanting to end this war for a multitude of reasons, and mostly economic ones. They want to actually pursue economic cooperation and partnership with everybody from east to west. And that's the aim. And you can see that from Kirill Dmitriev. So now the restored communication channels, according to the AP, will provide a consistent military-to-military contact as the parties continue to work towards a lasting peace. This was said by the U.S. European Command, and this emerged from a meeting between Russian and American military officials in the UAE. So that's essentially what's going on. What ended up happening was there was an agreed ceasefire type of thing where Moscow agreed to stop for a certain portion of the time. They completed that, and Donald Trump said Putin did fulfill his word, his promise. Once they completed that, they attacked key infrastructure in Ukraine, which then Ukraine says, oh, so Russia's not serious about peace. But that was after that time expired. Now, the other thing is that there's the nuclear treaty, the START treaty, right? And Donald Trump has said he wants to make a new treaty, and Russia hasn't really said that they want to do that. So it's interesting. Like they're kind of now shifting focus to the nuclear START treaty. And Lavrov recently, I think yesterday, gave an interview to RT, and he stated that Russia's ready to collaborate with the U.S. and that more than willing, and he doesn't want to continue, this conflict, but they feel like the U.S. is kind of, and he did this interview with Rick Sanchez, kind of dragging its feet. So, fam, anything to say on that for now?
When is it going to end?
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean,
it's so from a Russian perspective, a lot of people are saying the same thing. Like, this is lasting longer than the Great Patriotic War. This is like, now we're on 4 years. That's another reason why Russia wants to end this very badly. Like, because from the perspective of people there, they're like tired of it. They're tired of the repercussions, the sanctions, the travel issues. But what I am seeing is American businesses go back to Russia and Russian businesses go to America. So I do think like they are headed in that direction. You know, these things take time. It's never going to be like super quick, but I do think it's going to happen. I don't think this is like a forever war that we're going to see. That's just, my opinion based on what I'm seeing, based on the people that are in place and power and the conversations that they're having, like Kirill Dmitriev, constantly. And if they want to end it, they need to do it now with the Trump administration, because they kind of favor each other. And it's not like a Democrat thing. It's like, it's the reality, right? Like they're kind of doing this whole thing. Like the US and Russia have a lot of things in common. We're Christian nations, blah, blah, blah. Like they're trying to find that sort of connection. And I think a lot of people in Moscow, as you can see, as you probably saw working with them, have more of an affiliation for the US right than they do for
time.
The
beyond
liberal.
Surprised, beyond confused, beyond surprised. It's like Jayme says, what's going to happen? Okay, if they appease the Trump administration and the conservatives over here, what's going to happen when the left gets back in? I mean, it's like they're almost feeding into the narrative that Putin is serving Trump's cause, which we know is not true. And when the RT has a chance to talk about and be like independent when it comes to foreign policy, yeah, that's great. But when they start talking about these issues, I mean, like, what are you guys doing? Like, it's just crazy. And now even it's bleeding into the foreign policy aspect, where it's like, come on, guys. Like, I am so confused, seeing these shots with Putin and Jelani. It's just beyond, like, what the hell is going on? I think Fiorella hit it on the nose, and we need to pay more attention to what you were saying. And Kalshi doesn't have a bet up for when that war ends, by the way.
Yeah, there's Jayme, some of this is out of, I would say out of It's older because I had it from the other day. So there's a video, the last two tweets from Kirill Dmitriev, if we can go to that one. Yeah, so there's this one, right? Yeah, so he said constructive meeting with the US peacemaking delegation. He calls the US a peacemaking delegation. Productive discussion also on US Russia economic working group. That was Stephen Witkoff. That was on January 31st, I think he said that. And then the latest one, he's sharing a statement by Trump where Donald Trump is talking about how the United States is close to ending the war, right? But yeah, we'll play it in a minute. I can read this one. So there it is. It's okay, you can play it now.
But we're working hard to end that whole war. We're very close to doing it. We've almost done it. But we're
so according to Trump,
close to
like they're very close to doing this. This is being shared by the Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev, who has been in a lot of these conversations. So what does that mean for Russia, right? If there is a negotiation with the United States, well, it just means the United States is going to want some of these assets in Donbass, in the Arctic. That's kind of what they're aiming for, kind of what they're talking about. That's going to be their focus. I do think they see Russia as like not necessarily as an equal, but as somebody that has been able to defend itself, that's been able to essentially rise in structure and power economically and politically. And Putin kind of represents that. He also represents a president whose administration is talking about, you know, taking on globalists and taking on the satanic, you know, entities that are coming in from the West. And that sort of like rhetoric resonates a lot with a lot of like Christians and Republicans in the United States. And this is why you see more of an affinity, for example, for Russia than you would ever see them have for like Iran or for anybody in Latin America, because they kind of affiliate that way, like as a Christian, you know, white Christian nation. To be honest, I think that's also a huge part of it. In Russia, the immigration issue is kind of opposite. They need more people. So they do have a lot of immigrants, especially from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, from these former Soviet areas that were part of the Soviet Union. And usually people who immigrate from these areas are coming in to do like the snow shoveling, the cleaning up the streets, the whatever. And there's still a lot of tension between that, but the immigration is the process for them to immigrate is facilitated because of where they're from. They're from nearby countries, and it's just easier for them to get in there, like much easier than, for example, an American coming in and having to go through that process. And so it's a bit different because Russia's underpopulated for its size, so they need more people there, and they're trying to get more people to go to Russia and you know, to like produce and make money and that sort of thing. So their focus is very, very much on economics and on getting the country decentralized from the power sectors in Moscow. You have the majority of the economy and the industry in Moscow. Second, I would say St. Petersburg. Then you have Novosibirsk, which is like Siberia era, which is like central Russia. And then all the way far east past China, you have Vladivostok, which is like the area, you know, pretty much in Asia. And that's like a fishing industry, like, you know, because it has a port. But there's a lot of untapped potential in Russia, and there's a lot of untapped resources that I think the United States and Europe basically want their hands on. And that's always been the case. Now, when it comes to Russia, I also, part of the goal, the same as with Latin America, is China, like going after China. And there's always that push from the West, particularly from Washington, to create a rift between China and Russia, to try to get in there and be able to take them away from Asia, which I think is going to be difficult. But also people do need to understand there is some competition. Russia is largely dependent on China for a lot of the goods that people have there, just like everybody else is. And so there is that aspect of it where it's going to become about a race for these natural resources that are there. So when you look at this war, you shouldn't just look at it as like military only, and that it's about, you know, defeating fascism and Nazism. It is for a lot of people that are there fighting, that, you know, have risked their lives to do it. For them, that's in the Donbass in particular, they do have that sentiment. I've seen it firsthand. But when you're talking about, you know, the official management of a country so vast as Russia, obviously the economy is the driving force right now. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you view it, there's a lot of transactional negotiations happening, even the ones between talks with the United States and Iran, right? Like people are like, oh, wasn't Iran going to attack? It's like, well, they're trying to negotiate too. And this is a thing, like the Iran problem is the issue that I think won't go away. Because that's got to be, it is or it isn't, because Iran's in the way of Israel's expansion. So once Iran goes, Israel can fully expand.
Fam, I got some stuff in the chat. I want to pay a little bit more attention to some people in the chat because they've been kind of speaking up. Let's start with this one. It says, MAGA and the right are in a free fall domestically and on their way out of power. Where will that leave Russia once the Dems get back in power? I don't know. I think we're going to see another, once again, complete demonetization, ban. You know, I mean, they're not on YouTube. They're not on DirecTV or Dish Network or any of those networks anymore. So you have to limit it where you get them. And they seem to be pandering to the Trump conservative base. They really do. I'm so sorry, you know. And when somebody tried to tell me, oh, you know, RT isn't right versus left, I was like, yes, it is. And I've said this 6 months ago when I spoke to one of their producers before. It's like you guys are having this right-wing slanted bias when it comes to culture war issues. I know you guys are anti-woke, but it doesn't change the fact that, you know, these people in the streets have a reason and a belief for being there. We should go get that story and project that. Instead, you're talking about Somalis where it may be 9 billion. I mean, literally in the same clip where they're quoting Fox News and all these other people, right? They're freaking, Donald Trump says 1 billion, 9 billion, 19 billion. They're all over the fucking place. That's not news. That's propaganda. The Russians are foolish if they believe Trump is genuine in his aim to stop the conflict. Fam, what do you have to say to that? Because a lot of people do say that, you know, that there are hardliners in Russia, maybe generals, military people going, why are you trying to work with the United States? Yeah. Whether it be Trump, whether it be Biden, whether it be Obama, whether it be Clinton, they're going to try and balkanize us. Why are we dealing with them? What are your thoughts to this comment?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, all of this is known, but it's preferred to have an economic relationship because they see this administration as more favorable to them and as more favorable to the ends that they are pursuing, which is economic expansion. They're pursuing economic growth. They're pursuing international relations with everybody. BRICS isn't a counterweight to it's supposed to be to the G7. But ultimately, look who's in BRICS and look who isn't. You have India, you have you know, Gulf states that are very suspect, that are Zionist embedded, being allowed in, but Venezuela was not. You know, you have this whole scenario where BRICS is supposed to basically take after the UN. How well has the UN worked? You know, everything that BRICS does is according to the UN Charter. So it's like, you know, it's supposed to be this economic bloc that's going to de-dollarize and, you know, bring up other currencies and all of that. But that one takes time, takes a lot of time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And two, that doesn't mean that the money that these countries make is going to trickle down to the majority of the peoples of these countries. That's trickle down economics, and it doesn't work. Clearly, I mean, we're an example of that. There is a naivety, I think, in my humble opinion, to a lot of people in the Russian government. When I'm there, when I am in Russia, I always feel like that in general, there is such a kind of curiosity about Americans. There's not any animosity, hostility from most people about that. There's definitely a desire to have a better relationship with both Europe and the United States from the people and from the government itself. I would say there's definitely a desire to have a better relationship with the United States. They don't really like Europe right now because of everything NATO has done. And they feel like NATO is in shambles and the EU is in shambles, and it's true, they kind of are. So, you know, it's kind of like a dig at that. But when it comes to the US, there's kind of this camaraderie and this respect that is honestly undeserving for them to have of Washington. There's always the nostalgia of fighting against the Nazis. And this was a very important time for Russia during, you know, when there was the Soviet Union and the Great Patriotic War, and they fought alongside Americans against the Nazis and the fascists. This is why you still have that, you know, anti-Semitic focus in Russia, that you know, Zionism there, because that does come from that era where there was that thought, you know, the Nazis, because the Nazis were killing communists, not just Jews. They were killing Slavic peoples. They were killing anybody, Romani people, which is commonly referred to as gypsies. They were killing pretty much a lot of ethnic minorities that they thought were, you know, less than human. So it wasn't just like the Jews. And so when you put it all together, they kind of have this affinity for that time as well. So yeah, like I do think there's some naivete to that.
Kirill Dmitriev talks like Tommy Robinson. This kind of talking about what we were mentioning.
He does. He actually shared him several times, and that's like a far right guy. Like it's weird to me. You know, a lot of people say he's a fifth columnist, like he's there to bring the Russians closer to the West. It's possible, but again, like that's up to Russia. Like what can I do? Like if that's the choice that the government wants to make, that's up to them. I mean, it would be tragic in my opinion, and I do worry, going back to the question, what's going to happen when the Democrats come in, right? Yeah. Well, when the Democrats come in, they're going to resume their attacks against Russia, in my opinion. So anything that happens is momentary. You know, if they don't resume their attacks, they're going to try to infiltrate and come in and control. And there are just so many people who are so patriotic in Russia that I think they're going to have a hard time doing that. But there are also people who are just so infatuated with Americans and foreigners and Westerners, trust me, like, you know. And so like it depends on who's in power and who's able to get in Putin's ear and who's able to move things. You know, I would hope that there's more wisdom and self-respect. I would hope that there's not Charlie Brown taking the football for the 12th time again with a Minsk 5, you know, down the road. I hope, because I care about Russia and I care about the Russian people, which is why I genuinely hope that they know what they're doing. But after Syria, after everything that's happened the last 2 years, now 3, almost 2 years, it's honestly been some of the darkest years in the world, in my opinion. And it this year has not gotten any better. And it's just, I wouldn't say I'm jaded. I'm just looking at things very pragmatically and realistically. Like, I wish things were different, but where I'm seeing this going is just not good.
Well, with Kirill Dmitriev and Witkoff coming together for the Kirill Dmitriev and Stephen Witkoff coming together for the peace conversations. Does this mean
Jared Kushner?
Will the conflict end now?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think it's gonna. I think what we're seeing is like, I think the war as a whole is going to end this year, in my opinion. But is it going to end the Russia-US thing for good? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that's gonna, you know, end for good. They want to balkanize Russia, right? And it's you know, it's possible to do that because Russia's so big and there's different like ethnic groups. Like if you go to parts of Russia, you will think you're in Asia, especially if you're a American. You will think like I don't know, am I in China or something? Like
Yeah.
they would think that. You would think that. And you know, I've seen it, even family members visiting me in Russia being surprised, like, there's like Asian speaking Russians. I'm like, yes, they're like a Eurasian country. They're not just, you know, the blonde Russians. It's like
Yeah.
everybody else too. Yeah.
So here's the other question. Khrushchev, this is from Friendly Brilliant, our good friend. Khrushchev had more courage than Putin regarding
Yeah.
Cuba. Your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? Because it seems like Khrushchev was willing to go to the limits to support Fidel Castro and Cuba. And right here, it looks like we're just completely turning our backs. Russia's completely turning their backs. And I expected to see the Chinese, the Russians, big in type of Cuba, setting up economical systems and whatnot. Not at all. It's like they're completely on their own.
Yeah, well, guys, it's not surprising if you look at how Russia has been acting towards its so-called allies. The way Russia was trying to push Bashar al-Assad to pivot to the Gulf states, you know, this was majorly because they knew that was what Israel and the United States and Turkey were actually planning on doing with Syria, and their interests in Syria had largely, like, it was done. Like their mission in Syria was done. They just wanted to keep their military base. So they kept asking Bashar al-Assad to talk to the Gulf states to pivot to continue going this route, and he refused. And basically, there was that conversation in Astana that happened right before the fall of Damascus. And in that conversation, there was a conversation, like there was like a deal made, like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. And this is how you saw Bashar al-Assad escorted and escape with the Russians. He knew what was going to go down. And, you know, he hasn't faced the public, to which he has understandingly received a lot of criticism for, because you should always face the public, no matter what. Like, if you do something wrong and you feel bad about it, if you're a leader of the world, and if people were relying on you for years, and you fought this war and you did all this stuff, and you're a president, you need to face the public. You need to go out there and say, this is what things look like. This is how things are. That's what a leader should have done. He pretty much was escorted in Russia and to Russia, and he lives in Russia, and he lives well in Russia. I'll just venture to say that. He's not, you know, but is he free? Like, there's conversations that he isn't, like, free, so to speak. And well, beyond Bashar al-Assad, there are other elements in Syria, and you can go to Vanessa Bailey's channel where she talks endlessly about this, that you know, are not doing so well. People who supported Assad, who are in danger, who are being persecuted by the freaking Zolani gang, and it's just it's terrible. It's a terrible situation. But in that, you can see how Russia was basically like, okay, well, Syria's on their own, you know, like they didn't really fight alongside in the way that a lot of people expected them to. And a lot of people say, well, they didn't have to, right? They tried, and it's not their fault. Well, okay, but then I guess we need to redefine the extent of allyship. And Venezuela, right? They didn't come to Venezuela's rescue. And again, is Russia going to save the world? No. Like, I don't think that's what people are talking about. But I think people had the idea that if Russia was taking on the collective West and they were taking on the hegemony of the West, then helping their allies is part of that. And so I think people made the connection, like, okay, well, if they're doing that, then they must, you know, go and help Venezuela, go and help Cuba, go and help Iran. And they're not doing that because that's not how they operate. They're operating pragmatically. They're operating like, if our interests here are in jeopardy and our allies' interests affect our interests, then yes, we're going to do something. Iran is another story. Iran is very important for the region. That's their sphere of influence, right? So I do think that if there is any intervention, although Iran doesn't expect it, nor do they want it, and we also talk about this with Vanessa, and Iran doesn't want this, by the way, because there will be conditions placed on Israel's behalf when it comes to this. If you recall back in the day, I think it was the Bush years, Russia and Bush, Putin and Bush had a conversation, and they were against Iran pursuing nuclear weapons at that moment. And so, there's conversations that are had where Russia is acting as a mediator between the United States and Israel and Iran. And they're also allies, but it's kind of like, what does that mean? And I think people need to reassess, like, what does it mean in a pragmatic world where, listen, they're the ones with the power, they're the ones that are doing this, we got to do what we got to do to survive, to continue growing. And it's really becoming that cut and dry. And that's why I'm seeing, like, in every single government, I wish I wasn't seeing that. I wish I was seeing this revolutionary anti-imperialist build against the hegemonic West, like a lot of people have been talking about endlessly, like a lot of these analysts have been talking about endlessly online, and saying, oh, Russia and China rescue, blah 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 blah. It's like, but I don't see that. Tell me how you actually are seeing that in action. You can say it. We strongly condemn what's happening in Cuba. We stand with Cuba in solidarity and respecting their mutual sovereignty. I can recite it like this because I've read it so many times. But what action is being taken to do anything about it? Same thing in Gaza. We condemn what's happened in Gaza. It is absolutely inhumane what is happening in Gaza. What is actually being done about that? Nothing. And that's what you have to look at.
So this is where Scheinbaum is a coward compared to AMLO. This is Friendly Brilliant still says AMLO would be sending aid to Cuba. Fam, do you have any thoughts about what's going on? Scheinbaum seems to be one of those characters that, she did receive criticisms at one point that she wasn't being as harsh on Israel as she should be, but then we would see in particular situations where she would be. What do you think about her actions right now? She's also a little bit duped by the whole technocrats age and wants to plug into the whole track and trace systems because she thinks it will help the poorest of poors get banking systems. And that is true, but go ahead.
So quickly, since I think we got to move on because Jayme has to go right at 3. So I was in Mexico recently, and people really like her. 1, 2, Mexico has improved in safety, like in a lot of ways, poverty. Like I see it. I see the improvement. I walking the streets, I felt pretty safe, like way safer than I am in Peru, in my opinion. And it's just you can see like the improvement in the infrastructure and all of this. And that's not Claudia Scheinbaum. That was AMLO, right? Like that.
Well, Scheinbaum did carry on. He made a promise to build 1 million houses, right? And she's kind of continuing on that same type of pick up for the poor.
Yeah, she's totally continuing. The problem with a lot of the left, including Lula, including a lot of these like progressive, Latin American leaders, is they see things like the vaccines and things like, digital stuff as what people want and what makes them like America. When you're a country, and you have to get into the mentality of this, a Latin American country, a third world country as perceived by, the global majority, and your country lacks sanitation, your country lacks things that Americans have. Ooh, Americans get the vaccine first. Ooh, Americans have the facility to do everything with their phones. Ooh, so like when that is sold to you as an improvement of life, it's sold to you as something that elevates the status of your country. And if you don't have it, you're kind of not there. You don't want to be a third world country. You want to be a first world country, right? You want to grow and progress. That mentality has permeated much of the global majority or the global South. And that mentality is why many on the left, especially people like Lula and Claudia Scheinbaum, fall so easily, hook, line, and sinker for this technocratic kind of thing, because they see it as stepping up, as elevating, as going along with progressing in technology. And I understand this mentality, being also from Latin America, and understanding that that's how people, not just like the government, but like the public, perceive it as progression. Oh, here in Peru, I don't know if you recall the mask thing, fam, but People wanted Pfizer so bad. Pfizer
Yeah.
was like the best one to them because it was the best American thing. And that mentality is not just in South America or Central America, it's also in Russia. That exists. And it's what we've exported, this idea that everything we do is so much better. It's so much just, and even in the medicine that people take, if it's an American brand in Russia, it's so expensive. And it's American, it works better than the Russian brand. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And sometimes it's true and sometimes it's not, guys.
Yeah.
So, that's my thing to that.
Yeah.
And I think, she is sending aid. She is sending aid to Cuba, but she's not sending the oil, and neither is Venezuela. And Danny talked about this. We talk about that with him.
Let's get on to the next section because homeboy does have to go. Jayme, I don't know why you have to. You can just turn it off or whatever at its leisure. So if we get a little behind, we'll just try not to. So let's talk just a really quick update on ICE, because in Minnesota they were still setting up barricades, and last night, from what I understand, they found another hotel where there are ICE agents out, and they were still kind of banging on pots and pans in the streets, and I guess they were still sewing up and still sending people out. In Minnesota, ICE agents were still going out there doing some stuff. So we got to see if that eases back. But everything I reported on, it was kind of encouraging at the beginning of the next week when Tom Hooman made the announcement that ICE, Jayme, that ICE would be reducing its agents on the street down 700. There's still a lot of bit left behind. We understand that, but we think they'll be moving on, and that they were going to concentrate less in going in to grabbing people on the streets and concentrate more in the jails. Something that we've talked about is a great compromise. It should be done. There should be no ICE agents on the streets. They should work directly with the prisons, and that's it. That's how they should be doing this. I don't think that a lot of people would argue about that. I think the more the ICE detainment centers there are, the worse it is, because that's a true untold story right now, how bad those things are. And there's a whole financial fraud grabbing scandal going on, but people want to talk about Somali stuff. That's crazy. I know, it's so ridiculous. And what's going on in these ICE detention centers, ICE doesn't need detention centers. That's what I'm saying. Completely defang them, take away the detention centers, take away the agents on the streets, let them work directly with the prisons, and that's it. Anybody convicted of a serious crime, hand them over, and that's it. No more guys running into McDonald's, running into churches, running into schools. Get rid of all that shit. Get rid of your ICE detainment centers. Don't let them detain people, right? Because this is a whole scandal where they're purposely holding on to people, moving the jails, therefore, so they don't have to. The people being held don't have rights. It's a whole big scandal and fraud going on. But that's beside the point. Here's Donald Trump also talking that they went overboard. They went too hard, fam. And he knows it right now. This is backfiring on the administration. Take a look.
You learn.
I learned that maybe we can use a little bit of a softer touch.
Huh? You think?
Be tough. These are criminals. We're dealing with really hard criminals. But look, I've called the people. I've called the governor. I've called the mayor. Spoke to them. Had great conversations with them. And then I see them ranting and raving out there. Literally as though a call wasn't made. We've done a great job everywhere. The only place there's been a little inflammation has been really, it's not Minnesota, because we've done well with
Los Angeles too. There's been others. Yeah.
Well, I saved Los Angeles. The top law enforcement officer, right at the beginning of my time when they were having riots, before me and it carried into me. If I didn't go in there with the National Guard, with troops, you wouldn't have the Olympics, which I got the Olympics. You wouldn't have the Olympics in Los Angeles. And he said, without the president sending in the troops, we would have lost Los Angeles. Yeah. And you know what? I saved Los Angeles. And we will do it again if we have to. And by the way, we're going to have a very safe Olympics, and we're going to have a very safe World Cup.
Once again, the typical Donald Trump. I got this. I did that. If it wasn't for me, if I didn't, it's hard criminals. But you can also see he's kind of planting in the language. He knows we could have had a softer touch. You should have had a softer touch. You know what I'm saying? It was ridiculous what you did. It's ridiculous what you're doing every single day. We see ICE videos out there, and I just got a couple of videos, fam. I wanted to go through real quick just to remind people what's going on. If there's anything that Instagram is useful for, other than cooking videos and Instagram models. It's putting up these particular videos of ICE agents going crazy. Fam, did you want to say something about what he said?
No, I want to, again, I've seen it on a lot of like pro-Russian channels. They have this idea too, like that of people who don't live in the US anymore, right? Who haven't been here, that it's just a bunch of like liberals or libtards protesting and and this is just all a psyop. And again, this isn't a psyop, and it's not just about, illegal immigrants too. This is literally Americans getting killed and being attacked, and the civil liberties of these people being trampled on. And I want to reiterate that point over and over again until people get it through their heads, because it's not just, of course, some people are defending their community or defending immigrants, that's the political stance they're taking, and that's fine. But beyond that, what I am saying is that is the excuse that they're using to pretty much go after anybody that doesn't agree with said thing. And if you're dumb enough to believe that it's not real, then you're the one that is falling for a psyop, because it's very real. It's very much happening all the time.
Yeah. Fiorella is a civil liberties gal. I don't know if you guys know about that, but she believes in her civil liberties. Take a look at some of the videos. We want to talk about breaking of civil liberties, and you're right. This is what it's all about. San Antonio, Texas, ICE agents enter into a home illegally with no warrant. This shit is still going on. Here, take a look.
Happened today in San Antonio, Texas. U.S. citizens, no warrant. ICE broke in.
They're inside my house. Wait, Mom, is that you? Wait, Mom, is. Where is he? Get out the fucking house. You don't have a fucking warrant. Get out the house. No warrant. You didn't touch him. Why you touch him?
They're just wearing a vest.
There is a kid in the house with them, and they're all U.S. citizens.
Show your papers. Show your papers.
They're like walking around the house without a warrant.
I think I would die, because I would literally be so pissed off at them. I would be like
the guy
screaming
has the
at them.
audacity to push his phone out of the way. They don't want to be filmed, but they don't have masks on.
It's not Anthony. This other guy that's trying to help. Anthony's right here. But me and Anthony are not going to get this. I don't know. I don't want to have to. Hold on.
And this stuff is going on. Let's get to the next video, Jayme, because we got to get through these real quickly. I just got a couple more. And some of these are from like a couple weeks ago. Some of them a couple months ago. Some of them just recently. Let's get to the next video. I mean, it's beyond, this is a pre-K teacher. They went in without a warrant again. An administrative warrant is not a legit warrant. They went in with a judicial warrant, with an administrative warrant, which is shit. And they pretty much take a pre-K teacher out. Look at this one.
This video captured the moment ICE agents dragged a pre-K teacher out of a daycare center on Chicago's north side. She can be seen pleading with the agents as she's pushed up against a waiting sedan. At one point, she shouts in Spanish, "I have papers."
ICE agents followed a teacher into the facility without a warrant and abducted her in front of her students. This woman is a trusted loved member of her community with a work permit.
Officials identified the woman as Diana Galliano, a Colombian national in the country since 2023 and seeking asylum. Children, teachers, and parents inside at the time of the arrest said they were traumatized by what they saw.
What has happened today is domestic terrorism. And it is absurd and horrific that they have now targeted our daycare centers.
Until recently, sensitive areas like schools and hospitals were generally off limits to immigration enforcement. That changed under the second Trump administration. Today's incident, the latest in a string of controversial arrests that have been happening across Chicago as part of the Trump administration's immigration crackdown.
In a statement to CBS News, the Department of Homeland Security denied targeting the daycare center and said Galliano was in a car that sped away from ICE agents and then fled on foot in the daycare center where she was arrested. ICE officials say their operations target specific individuals, not locations, and that agents follow the law. But their tactics have come under fire, with critics calling them excessive and dangerous, especially when arrests happen near schools or in public places.
Next one, Jayme. Next one. And I think it's the last one. I think I only got 3 of them in today, right? ICE agents think that they can stop people from filming you, right? I got 4 of them. So this is the one. We're only arresting immigrants. No,
you're not.
You're not.
You're arresting and killing U.S. citizens.
Can't hear you. There's no American citizens have been arrested or detained. We focus on those that are here illegally, and anything that you would hear or report that would be different than that is simply not true and false reporting.
A U.S. citizen who was arrested this week by federal agents has been released from custody. She claims she was targeted because she's Latina.
Was detained at the request of immigration authorities. The problem is Lopez Gomez is an American citizen.
Walking free from an immigration facility in Texas after being taken into custody by Border Patrol.
But his attorney tells us he's a U.S. citizen.
Miguel says he told officers he had his social birth certificate at home, but they refuse to believe him.
Yeah. More than 100 U.S. citizens. They have a place where they hold U.S. citizens. It's a big fucking lie. I mean, it's just, and I know these piss you off, fam. I got one more last one to piss you off. This is what America's become under Donald Trump. And yes, it is Donald Trump. I'm not saying that the last administrations were great. You know what I'm saying? They didn't care about your Constitution. By the way, it's so funny because these constitutions, these from the ACLU constitutions, these were being handed out at the rally. And it used to be a big thing. It used to be, oh, what are you, a right winger? You believe in the Constitution? Yeah. Now here comes the left saying the same thing. Like I said, they didn't care about trampling on the Constitution and your civil liberties and your rights during COVID, but now they care when it's ICE. It's just this game that goes back and forth. But once again, ICE agents telling U.S. citizens that they can't film them. Yes, you can, per the fucking Constitution. Roll it, Jayme.
Right now, so you're not free to record. No, we are free to record. Yeah, we're not free to record. You're detained right now, sir.
No, we're not detained. They haven't told us we're detained.
They didn't say nothing about it. I'm telling you right now, you're
detained. No, we're not detained. Nope.
Look at them. Look how pissed off they get that you were filming them.
I got that too on recording already. And you are not.
I would go live. I would go live.
They're not detained.
Get off the phone. Turn the phone off.
It's like they don't want people to see what they're doing. They're illegal action.
If you hurt us, we'll put it on my.
Yeah.
Put your hands here. Come on. You want to go in cuffs? Come on. Come on. Hey, what? Man, come on. All right.
I don't know. I think that they're acting like the IDF or worse.
Stop moving around. You understand? Where get my point with?
Wow.
There's a lot of really black and brown people working for ICE too.
Yeah.
And that really
well, the two that shot Alex Pretty were
Latino.
Latinos.
Yeah.
You know why? Because they offer them a $50K bonus. They offer a lot of I think, was it debt forgiveness? They offer, because the pay is shit. The pay is like $40,000 a year. No, but they offer you a
Yeah, but you need to do 15 push-ups like in 2 minutes. You don't have to take a psychological eval. It's all this bullshit. It's like, I can be an ICE agent right away. It's so easy to be an ICE agent, and there might be something to it. Like a lot of these ICE agents might be Proud Boys and shit. I bet they are, like, in these American, what do you call those, Patriot Front guys and shit? Like,
yeah,
what
a lot of them are.
Do you have to have?
The one that pisses me, the Latino thing pisses me off a lot, because that is they're targeting Latinos. In fact, they have been targeting like Latinos specifically to do that.
Yeah,
and that is, to me, profiling. Sick. They know
they're racially profiling Latinos. The kid I talked to, his dad worked at McDonald's. They waited. The father came out to take the garbage. They walked in. They grabbed him. Just disgusting.
This is terrorism, and it's a violation of everybody's rights, not just undocumented whatever. It's literally like a violation of everybody's rights. If they can go into these people's American citizens' houses, not that it makes it, by the way, any better that if somebody isn't a citizen. I just, but for a lot of people, right, it makes a difference. For me, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't have people barging into places like this, like without warrants, without any sort of accountability. And on top of that, they don't want you to film them. Like, it's really disgusting how people justify this. You're not an American if you justify this. If you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in the actual law of the Constitution, your amendments, you wouldn't justify this. You're a hypocrite if you justify this under the Constitution. This isn't anything that is for the law or for any sort of order. This is disorderly. This is chaotic. This is actually going to instigate so much chaos if it continues like this. And this is precisely why it's not over. While the activists have won in Minneapolis a major battle, and Trump has had to pull back, note that this is still going on, and people are going to have to do something about it. All people are going to have to do something about it. Unfortunately, that's what it's going to take.
He won't pull the chain completely right now because his base still likes it, and it's disgusting that his base likes it. And if you're part of his base that likes this, I'm not going to even use the term xenophobic. You're racist. You're fucking racist. This is like they're going in and profiling people and then just grabbing them off the streets, right? And it sucks to see a lot of the American citizens, the black and brown community out here going and standing behind this shit. I mean, you think they're going to fucking care about you? They'll do the same thing to you when this shit is done. They don't care about you. They don't give a fuck about you. Guys, that's it for today. We're going to say goodbye now because we have a video we're going to play. I know there's some people who want to see this interview we had with Danny Shaw. Going to talk a little bit more about Venezuela. I put all the banners up, Jayme, so you don't even have to worry. You can just let it play. Fam and I asked some great questions. We're going to still be getting out in the streets. Listen, fam, I made a couple of give, send, goes up. I will get them over to you so you can okay them. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to find ways that you can help us out to get into these other countries because election integrity matters. We have 3 elections we'd love to go to. We'd love to go to Peru's election because Peru is a very important country. They're part of the Lithium Triangle. They pretty much jail any reformist president that tries to change their constitution and nationalize their lithium. They have an election coming up, I believe in April, and me and Fee would like to hit the ground, go see that. We'd like to get back to Colombia. It's going to be interesting who's going to be in charge next of Colombia, fam. The conservatives and the right wing in America, the foreign policy apparatus. I don't want to say the right wing. The American government, Democrat and Republican, want another fucking a Duque in there to do their bidding. They don't like Gustavo Petro, and I understand Gustavo Petro has gotten there's some issues about him a lot of people on the left don't like, but he's far better than what we saw before him. So they have that election coming up, very important. Then Brazil at the end of the year. So we're going to find some ways in which you could help out independent media, help us get it back on the ground as well. And I would like to make a documentary, fam, a 30-minute documentary on my time in Minnesota. All the work is done. I just have to do some voiceover, but I would need help with that as well because I don't know where we can put it up and put it out there. I don't think that RT would put it up, to be honest with you. So we'd have to find other places to maybe put it up. But that work that was done, I'd like to highlight that because this is still going to go on, and this is a major problem in the United States. But I want to say thank you to everybody out there today for watching the show. Family, have any last words?
No, just like let's watch this interview with Danny Shaw, like on Venezuela and Cuba, because he has a lot of experience there, and we really hope to take on more Latin American countries. Obviously, Latin America is in Trump's sphere of influence. It's he's targeting Latin America, he's targeting the Middle East, as we said he would on this show. So that's exactly what's happening.
Fam, we did 3 shows together this week. I think it's a while since we've done that together, because we're always on the road doing stuff and missing each other. But we did it, fam. old school combo couch days.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for Fiorella Isabel, Johnny Tsunami, Fiorella Isabel, Jayme CheeseSlice on the 1s and 2s. I am Pasta Jardula. Thank you, guys. It was truth time, but now it's truth out time. We'll see you next Monday.
Well, watch the video.
Watch the interview. Sorry, my bad. Here's Danny Shaw. Okay, welcome back to the show, everybody. We have a guest for you. He is a professor at City University, New York. You guys know him. He's a man who goes out to Latin America, brings back the story, does a lot of work in Haiti, Venezuela, Cuba. I've been in Nicaragua with this cat. I love him. He's back on the show, ladies and gentlemen. Professor Danny Shaw is with us.
Peace, Pasta and Fiorella. Thanks for the invite.
Definitely. I always like to start off by saying sac passe, but we'll just get the ball rolling over here. So listen, I'm going to let Fiorella fire away a bunch of questions, but maybe you can start off this particular segment by telling us what the state of Venezuela, where they at right now, because a lot of people have questions. We see they've amended their constitution to be able to allow, looks like outside sources to come on in and be a part of the oil industry. There's been talk about Alex Saab being picked up. Some of the cabinet has been changed since Delcy Rodriguez has been taken power, but she is a Chavista. So unpack where we are with Venezuela today, because I saw you making a video saying people don't fall for the CIA tactics, the rhetoric, the propaganda. But there are a lot of people out there, Danny, thinking that some people within the Venezuelan government did portray Nicolas Maduro. The fact that the United States was able to fly in there and get him, I understand they killed like 80 people in the process, but it still seems like way almost impossible, even for like a country like Venezuela. Please give us your point of view. Yeah.
Your
Sorry.
recording just started. It just went, it says 22 seconds, unless I'm mistaken.
No, it says 142 on my side.
I see 146, 146.
Yeah, we're good. Go right into it, Danny. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, they're changing the trash behind me. I might as well give it 1 second to clear. The main talking points that we've heard in the mainstream media, and unfortunately I think it's been parroted by a lot of streamers and leftists, is that Delcy Rodriguez is betraying the Chavista revolution, the Bolivarian revolution. I continue to be in touch and work closely with the Bolivarian leadership. They have weekly events, and they're continuing to invite internationalists and anti-imperialists to go to Caracas. We just had the 1-month anniversary of the abduction, of the kidnapping of Presidente Nicolas Maduro. We were out in front of the detention center in subarctic temperatures on Tuesday with Telesur, with William Camacaro and other Venezuelan leaders, standing with a Bolivarian leadership that I think continues to be united. They're not bothered by all of the noise around them. Do they want to have sit-downs with Western oil executives? Would they prefer to have sit-downs with other socialist representatives from Cuba and Vietnam and China and, the best representatives of people's democracy the world over? Of course they would, but we don't live in that world. I think it's very easy to bang our fists and to listen to keyboard warriors say, look at Delcy Rodriguez. She sat down with this entity and with this oil company. Hugo Chavez, Nicolas Maduro, the Bolivarians have always said that they're willing to work peacefully. We just heard from Miguel Diaz-Canel, the president of Cuba, a few hours ago, that they're willing to work with the United States, but not with preconditions. But the Venezuelans are in compromise mode. There's no question. They continue. Trump's never removed the 20,000 soldiers who surround them in the Caribbean Sea. The United States has not shut down the 9 U.S. military bases that they have in Colombia. Northern 9 military. I think it's 11 in Panama, 9 in Colombia. They haven't shut down any of those bases, nor any of the 20 bases that they used in the Dominican Republic and in Puerto Rico to invade Venezuela 33 days ago. So this is, again, to contextualize anti-imperialist David versus massive complex that is Goliath. And the main CIA talking point picked up by the Miami Herald and the New York Times and the CNN is that the Bolivarian leadership is divided and there's chaos in Caracas. But from the inside, that's not what we're seeing. We don't have proof of any betrayal, whether there was some mid-level betrayal, that certainly could be true. And it was really the blockade and the economic war and the misinformational war, the disinformation war, that paved the way for this brazen July 3rd invasion of Caracas.
Yeah, Danny, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I also have heard the same echoes from my own sources within Venezuela. One of the things that I had been looking at to how Venezuela would respond was the shipments of oil to Cuba. Cuba, as you well know, is highly dependent on this oil, has already had long lines, is already in an economic stranglehold by the United States, a 60-plus year blockade, the sanctions, the being designated sponsor of domestic terror, and just various other attacks that it has undergone, especially post-COVID, and how that destroyed the tourist economy there. And so I was really looking to see how Venezuela would respond, how Mexico would respond. And what I have seen, unfortunately, is that Venezuela is not going to be able to transport the oil, not necessarily because of their own desire, but because the United States has made it impossible for these shipments to get to Cuba. And they have basically set that out, that whole entire line across Latin America, that they will not allow this. Simultaneously, Donald Trump has stated that he has been in conversations and will be having more conversations with the leadership in Cuba. What do you say to people who say that Venezuela is leaving Cuba dry and isn't going to give them the oil that they so desperately need, despite this brotherhood, this camaraderie, this decades and decades ongoing relationship that is built on solidarity, mutual respect, and a very real revolutionary spirit?
Yeah, great question. Another, I think, talking point that has to be constantly refuted and debunked. We should remember that Telesur is a joint Cuban-Venezuelan operation. ALBA, Mercosur, all of these economic agreements that have existed. They also existed with the Argentinians and the Uruguayans and the Bolivians before those countries moved to the right. So Venezuela and Cuba have become increasingly more and more isolated. But I would say, similar to the rumors that we always hear that somehow Fidel Castro betrayed Ernesto Che Guevara in Bolivia, these are just CIA talking points. They want us to think that the Venezuelans would turn their backs on the Cubans. I think that's absolutely untrue. 34 Cubans gave their lives in defense of Nicolas Maduro on January 3rd. More than 100 individuals, total Cubans and Venezuelans, innocents, were murdered. All of Trump's talking points and everything we hear in the mainstream media have been lies. We still don't know to this day how many U.S. Marines, U.S. soldiers were injured or even killed. But people are so quick to want to have that hot take online, and they say that, you know, none of the invaders or kidnappers were ever hit, and that's untrue. The Venezuelans have been a lifeline for the Cubans because of this blockade. If we talked about a special period in the 1990s, I would say that special period, which is the official term that the Cuban leadership has used, we've now entered into, as of a few weeks ago, a super special period or an extraordinary period. Cubans are going to have their caloric intake cut off, their gasoline, their electricity. I'm in constant touch. I've been to Cuba every few years since 1995 to from an anti-imperialist angle, monitor the situation there and listen to the everyday people of Cuba. I published a piece a few months back called Cuban Flames, Imperialist Tundra, because the masses of Cuba are suffering, and they do grow skinnier every day. Of course, as these Miami anti-Cubans or gusanos or the Venezuelan escualidos point their finger at Cuba and blame the Cuban system without ever talking about a complete economic war and economic sabotage. When it's convenient for them, they brag about the bloqueo, and then they turn around and try to say, nah, the bloqueo is not real. Cuba is just a failed socialist state. It's pure propaganda. But on the ground, Cuba is going into a period of real hunger. The Cuban state does not have the resources. The Russians are cut off. The Chinese have been cut off. Claudia Sheinbaum has heroically and in solidarity continued to provide the humanitarian solidarity assistance that she can, but it's very symbolic. It's not enough for the 11 million people of Cuba. And what is the CIA blueprint? What are they trying to do? They're trying to provoke in the next week or two what they're going to call hunger riots, hunger protests. They're going to try to provoke whatever type of quote unquote repression from the Cuban state. And then the CIA will broadcast that across social media and MSNBC and CBS. And then they'll try to use that to then justify a type of military incursion, invasion, and occupation of Cuba, threatening the 67-year-old Cuban revolution.
Pasta, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much. So did Delcy then, in fact, change the Constitution? Can you explain that? Because we've also seen stories, and I don't know, fam, maybe you can confirm. Is Alex Saab missing? Where is Alex Saab at this point? You know, I heard there was changes within the cabinet right away once Delcy took over. Why do you think those changes were made? And why did Delcy change the Constitution to be more open to have outside oil companies come in?
In terms of Alex Saab, the Venezuelan state has always stood with Alex Saab. Many of us traveled to Venezuela in defense of Alex Saab. I've seen him continue to have the same anti-imperialist line. I don't know that he is missing. I can't confirm that right now. I know he's been highly critical of the Colombian elites and oligarchs in recent days. In terms of modifications to the Bolivarian Constitution, I also not an expert on that exact question, but I feel like for a long time, even under Nicolas Maduro and Hugo Chavez's leadership, they were willing to sit down with Western executives. They were willing to sell to Western markets on mutually beneficial terms, which is, of course, a contradiction. But if those are the outlets that they have, during a very difficult situation where the Russians are blocked off and the Russians are bogged down in a proxy war, how much has the U.S. and Germany, England and France, the NATO countries, spent on this proxy war against Russia? And Russia's been isolated in their own right. Fiorella did a whole episode on this with the comrade who spent a great deal of time over in Syria, risking her, life and limb. Vanessa Bailey, there aren't going to be any saviors. We would like nothing more than the Chinese or the Russians to go into Cuba right now and to stand by Cuba and to say that if you touch one hair on the Cubans' heads, we will retaliate. And that's not the world that we live in. The Chinese are not going to do this. There's no savior. The Cubans are on their own, not because they want to be. That's just the reality, the real politique of the situation. And people should watch very closely Miguel Diaz-Canel's press conference, which he just did a few short hours ago, where he spoke directly to this and said, we won't be intimidated. You've been trying to bully us and push us around. We want to define who we'll work with. We have no problems working towards peace with the United States. But why do you continue to have Guantanamo Bay? Why do you continue to threaten to overthrow us? So the Cubans and the Venezuelans know who the enemy is, but they're also trapped in a real politique situation with incredible campaigns of hunger and misinformation against them. And I think that's the political context that we have to provide right now. But I'm not aware whether it's rumors or not in terms of modifications to the Constitution or whether it was done with a gun to the Bolivarian leadership's head. Of course, we hear about the CIA opening up their offices in Caracas. The CIA never closed their offices in Caracas. How many times did the CIA try to assassinate Hugo Chavez? How many times did they use drones to try to assassinate Nicolas Maduro in the middle of his speeches? They're more open, they're more brazen, because that's Trump's wolf-like style, versus a Cory Booker, congressman from here in neighboring New Jersey, who's critiquing Trump in the Bolivarian, saying that, you know, the Trump's not hard enough on, amazing to hear this coming from the quote unquote left, or the liberals, the Democrats, with Cory Booker as one of their spokespeople, saying that they're not comfortable with even having dialogue. So the Democrats want more war than the war that Trump has already given the 30 million people of Venezuela, 30 million people who have been facing all of the long lines and the sanctions. These are historically backward dependent economies trying to climb out of it. And there's a fifth column within Venezuela. People should not have any illusions that the oligarchs, the elites, still exist within Venezuela, whereas in 1959 they were crushed in the streets of Havana and Santiago de Cuba.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you're mentioning all of this, because I think in terms of the Delcy Rodriguez situation, it was a reform that just will allow the U.S. oil companies to begin having a license to pump oil in Venezuela. But a lot of what Danny says is true. This was long established by Nicolas Maduro. In fact, Nicolas Maduro opened up conversations with the Venezuelan opposition, and this is largely why you saw many of the opposition angry when Nicolas Maduro was taken, because as much as they opposed him, there was a complete and total disrespect and violation of their sovereignty. So on that note, it's not surprising. What I do want to mention is the real politic that Danny mentioned. I mean, this is the reality, is as states. Venezuela does not have a navy to combat the United States. So whenever they have tried to, they would like to send oil to Cuba, the United States prevents that. They don't have a navy to be able to go to war with the United States. They don't have the capacity to do that at that level on a in the ocean. Okay, so that's why it's kind of like they have their hands cut off at that point. In accepting that point, that means that there are issues, there are diplomatic issues, there are negotiations happening with the United States. And my worry, as somebody that supports Venezuela, supports Cuba, and respects their sovereignty, is any negotiation that, as we all know, sitting here, made with the United States has never benefited the other side, right? We've never seen Libya come out favored when the Gaddafi was overthrown, when they pushed for that. We haven't seen Afghanistan or Iraq benefit from negotiations and relationships with the United States. But it seems like the United States is trying to lead with this idea that Trump is a peace president, that he is going to negotiate with Iran, that he is going to negotiate with Cuba, that he is going to negotiate with Venezuela. Simultaneously, though, we're seeing these last bastions of revolution be attacked one by one. And that is something that does worry me. But the reality is nations like Cuba and Venezuela aren't going to see intervention by Russia or China on their behalf. It is out of the scope of what they perceive as their influence. Iran is another story. But in terms of Caracas, what you're seeing is a lot of statements condemning what's happening, saying they stand with them in solidarity, but you're not going to see intervention. And so at that point, Danny, I guess my question to you is, what can they do? What can Venezuela do? What can Cuba do facing this giant adversity, this giant Goliath, as you stated earlier, that is the United States government? If they are not able to have a bloc like the equivalent of NATO backing them, they have to do what they can to survive, is my conclusion.
This is imperialism's response to one of our favorite buzzwords over the past few years: multipolarity. Where's the military multipolarity to defend against the kidnapping of a South American president? Where's the military multipolarity and even economic multipolarity to stand with Cuba? I would say Cuba is approaching their most difficult moments, perhaps 1990, 1991, when the Cuban masses' caloric intake was overnight cut in half from roughly 2,800 calories to 1,400 calories. Cuba doesn't have the vast reserves of wilderness and mountains and that Venezuela has, the deep natural resources. All of us who are anti-imperialists, this is the time to be in the streets in defense of Cuba. We need reporting coming from Cuba, standing with the Cuban masses. My publications over the past year in defense of Cuba have tried to alert the Russians, the Chinese, that the Cuban people can only hold on for so much longer. Right now, to even get a bus in Cuba is almost impossible. They're down to probably their last 6 or 7 days of oil reserves. We know that the full, complete U.S. naval blockade is not going to allow anything to come from Venezuela or Mexico, despite the great intentions of Delcy Rodriguez and the rest of the Bolivarian leadership and Claudia Sheinbaum. This is highly illegal. It's in violation of the Geneva Convention and international law. I'm a little bit more optimistic about Venezuela. Delcy and Jorge Rodriguez and the leadership, these are anti-imperialists with years and years of training. I see no proof at this point to point the finger at them. I don't see betrayal. I don't see traitors at that level, but they want peace. The Venezuelan people want peace. They can't compete with a $1.3 trillion military budget coming out of the Pentagon. The United States GDP hovers around $30 trillion. The GDP of Haiti is about $200 billion. So, even saying like David versus Goliath, it's David versus an army of Goliaths, just to stretch that metaphor a little bit more. Cuba is very divided in a sense because, and of course my defense of Cuba is indisputable, but you also have to measure the temperature of everyday people. I think it's easy to beat our chests and say Patria o muerte and venceremos and Ernesto Che Guevara and Viva. And of course I say all of that, but that doesn't feed everyday people. Everyday people in Cuba can't access Tylenol and something to reduce the fever, everything that we take for granted. Their internet has long been cut off. There's no electricity right now. So the Cuban people are asking how much longer can we hang on as the CIA, as this economic terrain is created of hardship, of poverty, of hunger. Then the CIA comes in. I documented with the Gray Zone a number of years ago. I was there in 2001 when different CIA operatives were trying to recruit these Rastafaris and these hip hop artists, and they would have these hip hop festivals. So they're trying to find their fifth column to go into the streets of Cuba, talking about some democratic counter-revolution, provoke the Cuban authorities to then have whatever type of crackdown. That'll be on the front page. That'll be the #1 titular or headline. And then from Guantanamo, from Puerto Rico, they just sent 3 more naval battleships to Haiti. Haiti was supposed to have elections on Saturday in 2 days. So they've militarized the entire Caribbean. It's highly illegal. What we need right now is resistance and unity, and understanding that, as Fiorella said, the Bolivarians, whether they're in Cuba or Venezuela, have their hands tied behind their back. They're handcuffed. It's very difficult what they can do. That's why they are continuing to project peace, confidence, search for peace. But we know that the U.S., whether it's Biden or Trump or Obama or Bush, there's different styles, there's different rhetorics, there's different aesthetics, but it's the same quest to dominate all of the Caribbean and all of the riches of the hemisphere. This is the 1824 Monroe Doctrine, revisited, remixed into the Dunroe Doctrine of 2026, where they're afraid of the Chinese, they're afraid of the Russians, the Iranians. The Iranians had many trade agreements with the Venezuelans. Those have all been cut off. So as Fiorella said, it's a domino effect. They're going one after one, trying to isolate all these countries. How could they ever seriously say that Trump is somehow a peace president? Look what's happening in Minnesota. Look what's happening with ICE across the country. How many people killed in ICE detention facilities, hundreds and hundreds whose names we never hear, the militarization surrounding Iran. What Iranian, in a country of 100 million, I've worked closely with the Iranians now for something like 15 years, what Iranian mother could go to sleep at night in peace, being surrounded by the largest armada, the largest military in the history of the world? So of course we know that Trump has nothing to do with peace and everything to do with imperial arrogance.
So before we get on to ICE or maybe talk a little bit about Haiti and some other subjects, I want to stick at Cuba for 1 second, because it's very different in Cuba than it is Venezuela. People don't understand. In Cuba, the bourgeoisie was gone. They were sent away. You talked about it. This is the movie Scarface, right? When they put on everybody, the last of the gusanos on the Muriel boat ride, said, get out of here. Of course, the CIA started these stories, propaganda, that Castro was emptying his prisons and insane asylums and sending everybody here. And that's how we got Tony Montana, an Italian guy playing a Cuban. Whatever. Who does the CIA want in charge of Cuba? Obviously, in Venezuela, they had an idea. They flaunted or floated Juan Guaido. We heard this about Maria Corina Machado. Who is next in line in Cuba? Is Marco Rubio going to send over a family from downtown Miami to take control? Who does the CIA want in charge in your mind?
Well, that's the thing. Like, even in it's funny because, a broken clock is right twice a day, but Trump himself said it. Trump said, Machado, no, she's a joke. Juan Guaido is a joke because they have zero popular support across Venezuela. And of course, I've been attacked, and you support a dictatorship in Venezuela, and how could you support the Cuban leadership? Well, because the Cuban people have historically supported that leadership. In all of my time in Venezuela, I've traveled there some 10 times since 2014. I go to the barrios, I go to El 23 de Enero, I go to Petare, I listen to people, I go to the countryside. So my political conclusions don't just come from what Delcy Rodriguez and Jorge Arriaza, the former foreign minister, is saying. It comes from the everyday people. The everyday people want their leadership in charge. They don't want some CIA stooge. And that's why Cuba hasn't been overthrown. We remember 4 summers ago in August of 2021, they tried to overthrow the Cuban government. They tried through the old CIA strategy, the same thing they're doing in the streets of Iran right now, trying to create this fifth column through the NED and through NGOs and quote unquote democracy initiatives. And that's why the Cubans have had to crack down all these years. And Michael Parenti, rest in power, one of our great socialist Marxist mentors who we lost about a week ago, always talked about this. Cuba is not true socialism. Cuba is besieged socialism. Venezuela has never been able to flourish the way they want to because there's always coups and assassination attempts and coup attempts. The 2002, if people haven't seen The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, an amazing film documentary about the last coup attempt in 2002 when they kidnapped Hugo Chavez for 48 hours, but the Venezuelan people were able to fight back and actually win. The CIA want a puppet, but the Cuban people won't allow it. That's why this has been so dragged out. But I don't think the Cuban people can survive much longer, because when everything's cut off, when you can't chill meat and transport meat and leche para los niños. Every time I talk about Cuba, se me va ahí el inglés. Just talking to Cubans every day, they continue to have the same patriotic support of their leadership, but they're also saying that just objectively, they don't know how much longer that they can hang on. And Trump knows this. Trump knows that it's a starvation campaign against Cuba. So it's important to get out these voices. These could be the final days of the Cuban Revolution. And what's that gonna look like? The biggest bully in the history of the world going up against this tiny island, just 90 miles, right there with Pasta's view in the background.
Yeah.
You're on mute.
What do you? Well,
Pasta's on.
Pasta. Oh, okay. Where do you see this going then, Danny? I mean, I see a very dark picture right now that the anti-imperialist world is facing. Like, as I stated earlier, one by one, the Trump administration, which of course has been chosen to do this, right? To do this because he has a lot of his supporters who condone everything he's been doing and tries to paint him as some sort of hero. So Trump has been chosen to implement surveillance, to implement crackdowns. to bring the foreign policy home into the United States with ICE, with this sort of domestic terror, with Palantir-backed technology in the applications of these IDF-trained soldiers. Well, we're seeing that happen simultaneously as we're seeing the last bastions of anti-imperialism attacked. Where do you see this going for Latin America? What's the end game here for the United States? That it goes beyond Trump. What is the end game that the United States is trying to do? Are they trying to build some sort of resource area, resource extraction, accumulation to face off China? Basically, I think even more than Russia and Tehran, I think the ultimate competitor for the United States is China. And it does seem like there's now a race from major powers to see who can accumulate this land and that land and who can get this and that. It seems like we're going towards an era of, I think, less nation states and more about elite global world powers, right? Because we've seen how deep that goes, especially with more and more Epstein revelations, that these people are never held accountable. These people are never arrested or given the lay of the land. They're not given the weight of the law. They never face it. And so what it seems is happening is just this preparation for an ultimate economic race of between the world powers. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, and it's so important what you pointed out, because so many liberals are caught up in Trump. Trump is just one spokesperson. Trump is the spearhead of an entire imperial colonial capitalist project. Trump is the ultimate spokesperson for the Elon Musks and the rest of the billionaire elite class, and all of these Epstein files, which you all have followed very closely and I think very eloquently. I was actually studying Pasta's interview on RT about this. I mean, these are the most decrepit individuals with no sense of morality whatsoever, and all of them have been complicit in this Mossad, CIA, Jeffrey Epstein operation, and it just shows who these individuals are. They're never held accountable. But a lot of people point the finger at Trump. Well, the Democrats helped lay the land, prepare the terrain for all of this. We should never forget what happened in Barack Obama's years in terms of the recolonization of Libya and Paraguay and the coup in Honduras and invasions and drones here. So it's consistent, Democrat or Republican, though certainly the Republican tactics from Minnesota and across the country have manifested as much more fascistic, and who could ever question that? But Fiorella also brought something up. You know, I first went to Cuba when I was 16 years old in 1995. I came back from a basketball tournament with Kobe Bryant in Junior Olympics out in Las Vegas, and went straight over the Canadian border to illegally, because U.S. law has stated that if you go to Cuba, you can be fined $100,000. You can go to jail for up to 10 years. Everyone should look at the architecture of this blockade to cut off Cuba. But then somehow in Miami, they flip it and they say, well, the Cubans are the authoritarians. And that's what Michael Parenti talks about. When you force fascism and authoritarianism and a CIA pressure campaign and hunger on a people, how do you want them to defend themselves? They're supposed to just roll over and surrender, you know, and give their country off to the CIA. Never. The Cubans are going to continue to resist valiantly and heroically. But how can I not, you know, a revolutionary is never allowed to feel any ounce of pessimism, at least not publicly. We always have to project that people are resisting. And when I talk to my comrades and friends across Venezuela and across Cuba, that's the same spirit that we try to project. But I've worked my entire life as an anti-imperialist, never received one penny or dollar for it, never expected to. The hundreds and hundreds of interviews and articles that I've published, and all the trips to Haiti, to Venezuela, and to Cuba, and to the Dominican Republic. And these are very, very dark moments. And shame on the Dominican Republic, and shame on Panama and Guatemala and Ecuador, these narco democracies, one clever term to describe them, who have se han prestado, they've lent themselves to be used by the CIA and used by U.S. imperialism to blockade and surround these other countries that are hanging on for dear life. I think the situation in Venezuela is more stable. Of course, it's worrisome. These leaders, again, don't want to sit down with their class enemy. They know they're sitting down with their enemy. They go back to their people at massive rallies. The rallies for Chavismo, for Nicolas Maduro, are larger than ever. Millions of people are taking to the streets across Venezuela every week, similar to the spirit of Amilcar Cabral in Cape Verde, in Guinea-Bissau. The Venezuelan and Cuban leaders speak the truth to their people, and they tell their people, we're resisting with everything we have, but we're up against a militarily and economically superior enemy. So I don't know that I can project a certain optimism that objectively does not exist. And it's clear. The definition of imperialism is the control of markets, the control of natural resources, the bank monopolies. And they're telling the Chinese, you're not welcome in Brazil, you're not welcome in Uruguay, two countries who in the past 26 years, their trade relationship went from U.S. dependent to a mutually beneficial relationship with China. That's exactly what this is all about. The U.S., with Donald Trump as a spearhead, does not want to allow any competition in the hemisphere.
Let's transition over to ICE, because last Friday was my last day in Minnesota. Thank you very much for sharing my article out there. It was it was so surreal being out there, witnessing everything, being by the Federal Whipple building, seeing the activists, seeing the system set up where they're following the ICE agents, letting people know with whistles and stuff that ICE agents are around, that they look at ICE as, and this is the majority of protesters I talk to and activists and whatnot, they look at ICE as a rogue institution that is fascistic, that is authoritarian, that is infringing on people's civil liberties. And not only that, they're just stalking and scaring the hell out of their citizens and their loved ones and the immigrants. It's really a story about love. About 100,000 people got in the streets on Friday, 5-degree weather. There was no mass production of signs and whatnot, so you can tell it was very, very organic. That seemed to scare the Trump administration, because today he was back walking, he was moonwalking again. And on Monday, Tom Hooman announced, who took over operations from Gregory Bavino, the old border patrol commander. He is the border czar, Hooman. And they announced that 700 ICE agents in Minnesota will be pulled off the streets. And I don't know why all the states aren't doing this. Like, really, the compromise should be, okay, look, pull all your agents off the street. We'll allow ICE to come into the prison system and take anybody who's been convicted of a violent crime, a rape, or a murder, but no agents on the street. That seems to be what should be happening. Mandami is going the other way. But in this particular situation, do you think the pulling of 700 ICE agents in Minnesota, even though there's still many left behind, do you think it was a win for the activists?
An incredible victory. Shout out to Minnesota. Minnesota and all of their resistance in May of 2020, in 2020, at the very beginning of COVID. And we all watched the over 9-minute torture and execution of George Floyd. And at that point, Minnesota gave us a tremendous moral example. And again, like you said, it's an incredible story of love, of solidarity, of unity. And that's what Alex Prenti and Nicole Good represented. I saw a video recently of him speaking Spanish to try to instill confidence within his Latino neighbors that they were welcome, and to give you a life. You know, that's actually an incredible thing. Like, he a week before he was murdered, the ICE had broken his ribs because he was in the streets trying to interrupt their kidnapping operations. There can be no question that this is an incredible victory for the masses of Minnesota who braved the cold, who stood toe-to-toe with the Tonton Macoutes of, that was Duvalier's private militia in Haiti with the dictatorship. These are Trump's, this is Trump's private militia. He's already preparing the terrain for the midterm elections in November, never mind the 2028 elections, which I'm sure we'll be talking about and covering in the upcoming years. We aren't going anywhere. We have to resist more than ever. We need truth tellers like Fiorella and Pasta. And the more that they censor us, the more that we have to get creative. But this private militia, I mean, you take some poor white who comes from a poor background like me, and you give them a 50,000 signing bonus in Brockton, Massachusetts, or Louisiana, or wherever, and this is, you know, Trump's ignorant base, backward base, people who have no understanding of the root causes of migration. Migration is a byproduct of imperialism. I just actually finished the whole lecture with a Haitian guest, because Haiti was supposed to have elections in 2 days on February 7th. That's a whole nother story. So big victory for Minnesota. We have to keep fighting. Trump's going to continue to recruit from this poor white base that has been socialized in the worst forms of racism, white supremacy, machismo, sexism, xenophobia, anti-immigrant hysteria. They want to cause a type of civil war scenario. It's actually interesting that Trump and his advisors, the true ruling class, decided to pull the 700 agents, because they could have sent in another 700 agents and tripled and quadrupled and tried to provoke the civil war type scenario that we've long suspected that they want to provoke. So this might have been a type of trial run, test run, to see what they can get away with the midterm elections.
Mhm. That's a good way of putting it, a trial run. This isn't over. I mean, they also pulled back military that was to deploy, actual military that was set to deploy to Minnesota. So I agree that I think this was a victory in a way, a battle, a victory of a battle, but the war is still ongoing, right? It's not done. In fact, the war has just begun. I think this was a turning point for many people to see, as you mentioned, the poor whites against everybody else. And it's not just the immigrants, it's literally the entire community of ethnicities across the board. And that is always going to be the most threatening to power, when groups of people organically organize and organically form a bond that goes beyond identities, that goes beyond everything that they've tried to divide us with, and says, this is wrong, this is a violation of whatever we were supposed to stand for in the Constitution, Amendment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I think for a lot of people, it was a wake-up call that they thought they weren't going to be targets. So I think this marks a pivotal shift in the way I think some people view it. I think this is just the beginning, and there's a lot more to come from this. So we'll be out there in the streets, and we'll be also echoing how our foreign policy is clearly directly related to our domestic policy. And we saw that played out in Minnesota, and Minnesota will not be the only state that sees this, because this is, again, a long process. And I just hope people don't divide themselves, don't allow themselves to be divided, because they win. When there's a civil war, we don't get an actual class war, an actual war against power. So Danny, thank you for coming on. Pasta, if you have anything else for him, please let him know. I just wanted to say that.
No, that's the 41 minutes that we have. That's all the time we have for you today. Danny, I know that sometimes we can run into each other when there's elections going on. I just want to show you the possible observation potentials. Now, Haiti was going to be on this list, but from what we understand, at the end of the year, they were supposed to have an election. They couldn't even have an election the other day, so we don't assume that there'll be elections in Haiti, but maybe we can add that to the list. But we got Peru, Colombia, and Brazil this year, so maybe we'll be rolling together in one of those three countries. Danny is a professor at the City University of New York and an activist in the Latin American solidarity movement. Danny, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time, guys.
Thanks.